I never thought I'd see the day when the very fabric of our family would be torn apart by the silent, creeping monster that is gambling addiction. It's a tale that begins in the warm embrace of our family home in Atlanta, Georgia, but quickly spirals into a cold struggle for survival, redemption, and love. But before we dive deep into this story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing how far our stories reach. My name is Auntie Maya, and at 72 years old, I've lived through a lot, seen a lot, and helped mend more broken hearts than I can count. But the story I'm about to share with you is close to my heart because it's about my own family. It's about my nephew, James, a bright young man with a promising future ahead of him, who fell into the dark world of gambling. James was always the life of the party, a beacon of joy in our family gatherings. With his quick wit and charming smile, he had a way of lighting up any room he entered. After graduating top of his class, he secured a job at a prestigious firm in downtown Atlanta. It was a proud moment for our family, but it was also the beginning of a nightmare we never saw coming. Gambling addiction is like a thief in the night. It sneaks up on you, slowly draining you of your joy, your finances, and your relationships, until all that's left is a shell of the person you once were. For James, it started innocently enough with a few bets on basketball games with friends. But soon, those harmless bets turned into frequent visits to casinos, and before we knew it, James was caught in the vicious cycle of chasing losses, lying, and borrowing money with no way to pay it back. The impact on our family was devastating. The once joyful family gatherings became tense and somber. Conversations that used to be filled with laughter and plans for the future were now dominated by whispered concerns about James. My sister, James's mother, aged years in a matter of months, the worry lines etched deep into her face, a testament to the sleepless nights she spent praying for her son's recovery. I watched helplessly as the family I loved and cherished began to crumble under the weight of James's addiction. But being the matriarch of the family, I knew I couldn't stand by and watch everything we built fall apart. I had to do something, anything, to save James and our family. So I started by educating myself on gambling addiction. I learned that it's a disease, not a moral failing, and that compassion, not judgment, was what James needed from us. I organized family meetings where we openly discussed the situation, expressing our feelings without blame or shame. It was a difficult and emotional process, but it was also the first step towards healing. We reached out to professionals for help, attending counseling sessions with James and supporting him as he embarked on the long road to recovery. There were setbacks, moments of despair when it felt like all our efforts were in vain, but we held on to hope, to each other, and we never gave up. And then, one day, something miraculous happened. James walked into the living room, his eyes clear and his voice steady, and he said the words we had been longing to hear: "I need help. I want to get better." It was the turning point in our journey, the moment when the tide began to turn. The road to recovery was long and winding, filled with challenges and moments of doubt, but James's willingness to fight for his future gave us all the strength to stand by him, no matter what. We learned the importance of forgiveness, of unconditional love, and the power of a family united against the odds. As I sit here today reflecting on our journey, I'm filled with gratitude for the lessons we learned and the love that held us together. James is now 2 years sober, working at a new job he loves, and rebuilding his life one day at a time. Our family gatherings are once again filled with laughter and hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. Continuing our journey, my story takes us back to that crisp October Monday in Atlanta, Georgia, where the leaves painted the sidewalks in shades of fire and gold. After discovering the letter hidden away in my father's attic, my heart was a mix of dread and curiosity. The letter, written in my mother's elegant script, revealed a secret she had kept for over 40 years, a secret about my heritage, my identity, and the real reason behind our family's peculiar traditions. As I sat at the old oak kitchen table, the letter in my trembling hands, I felt like the world I knew was starting to crumble around me. My mother had passed away when I was just a teenager, and my father, a stern but loving man, never spoke much about our family history. He would divert the conversation, always focusing on the future rather than the past. But here I was, holding a piece of that elusive past, feeling both betrayed and intrigued. The letter detailed my mother's journey from a small village in West Africa to the bustling streets of Atlanta. She spoke of a hidden lineage, one that traced back to a powerful lineage of healers and spiritual leaders in our home country. She had left it all behind for love for my father, but she carried a heavy heart, knowing she was breaking a generational promise. "My dearest child," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here to share our story with you. I want you to know the truth about who you are and where you come from. You come from a line of strong, powerful beings whose spirits are intertwined with the fate of our people. I left my homeland to build a new life here, but I have always carried the weight of my ancestors' legacy within me." The revelation sent shivers down my spine. All those times my mother would hum softly to herself, the strange symbols she'd doodle in the margins of her cookbooks, the peculiar herbs she grew in her garden that no one else seemed to cultivate. They all made sense now. She was trying to keep a piece of her heritage alive, even if it was in secret. I sat there for what felt like hours, rereading the letter, absorbing every word, every confession. My mother spoke of a sacred artifact, a family heirloom that was passed down through generations. It was now hidden somewhere in our family home, a link to our ancestors that she hoped I would find and embrace. The search for the artifact became my new purpose. I felt a deep connection to my mother, a sense of understanding I never had while she was alive. I began to look everywhere, moving from the attic to the basement, sifting through old boxes, albums, and books, hoping to find any clue that would lead me to this mysterious heirloom. As the days passed, the search turned up nothing. I was about to give up hope when, on a particularly chilly evening, I noticed a loose floorboard beneath the rug in my father's study. Heart-pounding, I pried it open with shaking hands. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, was a small, intricately carved wooden box. With bated breath, I opened it to find a beautifully crafted amulet, its stones shimmering in the dim light. Holding the amulet in my hands, I felt an overwhelming sense of belonging and purpose. It was as if my mother's spirit was right there with me, guiding me, comforting me. I knew then what I had to do. I had to learn more about my heritage, about the lineage of healers and leaders that I was descended from. It was time to embark on a journey back to my mother's homeland to uncover the rest of the story she had started to tell. But before I could make any plans, an unexpected visitor arrived at my doorstep. It was late, the night air cool and crisp when the doorbell rang. Standing there, in the faint glow of the porch light, was a woman I'd never seen before, but something about her felt familiar. "I knew your mother," she said, her voice carrying a hint of an accent I recognized from my mother's lullabies, "and I'm here to help you understand your legacy." The most shocking thing was yet to come. As we sat down to talk, she revealed connections and truths about my family that would challenge everything I knew about myself. It was clear this journey was just beginning, and I was about to uncover secrets that were meant to be discovered. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. Now, where were we? Yes, the day after my mother's funeral was when things took an unexpected turn. You see, I always thought I knew everything about my mama. She was a strong, fiercely independent woman who raised me all by herself in the heart of Atlanta. But as I was sorting through her belongings, I stumbled upon a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon, hidden away in the back of her closet. I remember the chill that ran down my spine as I untied the ribbon and began reading. The letters were from a man I had never heard of, confessing his undying love for my mother. Each letter was dated and meticulously preserved, spanning over a period of 40 years. It seemed like a love story that had been kept secret, buried in the shadows of my mother's past. As I delved deeper, the letters revealed a story that was both heartbreaking and beautiful. They spoke of a young love that was forbidden by their families, a love that had to endure in secret. The man, whose name was James, wrote about the moments they managed to steal away from the prying eyes of the world, each encounter more precious because of its rarity. But it wasn't just the love story that caught my breath. It was the revelation that James had a son, a child he believed was his and my mother's. My heart raced as I read his pleas for my mother to leave her life behind and join him, so they could be a family. It was clear from the letters that my mother never did. Sitting there, surrounded by the remnants of my mother's life, I felt as though I was reading a novel, not a chapter of my own family's history. The letters ended suddenly, the last one dated 10 years ago. There was no explanation, no farewell, just silence. The discovery left me with more questions than answers. Who was this man, and why had my mother kept him a secret? And the child, my possible half-brother, where was he? The need to find out consumed me. So I did what any determined daughter would do. I started digging. I scoured through old phone books, online records, anything that could give me a clue about James and his son. My search led me to a small town in Georgia, a few hours' drive from Atlanta. With a heart full of hope and a mind swirling with possibilities, I made the journey. The town was a picturesque slice of southern charm, but to me, it was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. I found James' last known address and stood in front of it, taking a deep breath before knocking on the door. An elderly man answered, his features strikingly familiar to the ones I had imagined from the letters. His eyes widened in shock when I introduced myself, and for a moment, there was silence. "Your mother was the love of my life," James finally said, voice thick with emotion. "And you're her spitting image." The hours that followed were filled with stories about my mother from a perspective I never knew. James told me about their young love, the challenges they faced, and the heartbreak of letting go. He also spoke of his son, Michael, who had moved to New York years ago to chase his dreams. As I left James' house that day, I felt a sense of peace, mixed with a newfound determination. My next step was clear. I needed to find Michael, not just for answers, but to connect with a part of my mother I never knew existed. But before I continue with that part of the journey, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your engagement means the world, and it helps us share these stories far and wide. Finding Michael was going to be my next challenge, but something told me it was going to be worth every effort. The thought of having a brother, of extending my family beyond what I thought was possible, filled me with an indescribable feeling. As the sun set on my drive back to Atlanta, I couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. Little did I know, the road to finding Michael would take me on a journey I never expected, one filled with twists, turns, and revelations that would change our lives forever. But that's a story for another day. For now, let's just say life has a way of surprising us, often in the most unexpected ways. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I never imagined that the secret my mother had been carrying for 40 years would unravel the fabric of our family in the way it did. After her passing, the words she left behind echoed in my mind, leaving me restless and full of questions. How could a secret so profound lay hidden for decades without a hint, without a whisper? The secret came to light on a crisp October evening in Atlanta, Georgia, right after we laid Mama to rest under the golden hues of the falling leaves. The family home, once a beacon of warmth and laughter, felt eerily silent as we gathered in the living room, each of us lost in our memories of her. That's when my brother James found the letter, tucked away in an old, dusty book on the highest shelf in Mama's library, a place she thought nobody would ever look. James read the letter aloud, his voice wavering with each word, his face a canvas of confusion and disbelief. The letter revealed that our mother had another child, a daughter, given up for adoption before any of us were born. This revelation struck us like lightning. A sister? All these years, and not a single mention, not a single clue. The air in the room grew thick with silence, each of us processing the weight of Mama's secret. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love knowing how far our stories travel. Determined to uncover the truth and understand the reasons behind Mama's decision, we embarked on a journey to find our long-lost sister. The search led us to dusty courthouses, old children's homes, and countless dead ends. But as fate would have it, we finally found a lead. A woman, roughly our age, living in a small town in North Carolina, with a birth record that matched the date Mama had written about in her letter. The drive to North Carolina was filled with anticipation and a myriad of emotions. What would she be like? Would she want to meet us? The thought of a sister, a part of Mama we never knew existed, both excited and terrified me. We pulled up to a quaint little house, surrounded by a picket fence and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within us. Knocking on the door, my heart raced as we awaited her answer. The door creaked open, and there she stood. Eyes wide with curiosity, she looked at us, a mirror image of Mama staring back. "Can I help you?" Her voice, gentle yet guarded. Taking a deep breath, James introduced us, explaining the purpose of our visit. Her reaction was one of disbelief, her hand trembling as she invited us in. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by photos of her life, we shared stories of Mama, piecing together the years lost. Tears were shed, laughter echoed, and a bond began to form. She had known about us, always wondering about the family she never got to meet, holding no resentment, only longing. The most shocking thing, however, was yet to come. Our sister, Ella, revealed that Mama had been in contact with her all along, in secret. Mama had been there for every major milestone, watching from a distance, loving her from afar. This revelation brought a new wave of emotions. How could Mama, the glue that held our family together, keep such a significant part of her life hidden from us? As we left Ella's home that day, a sense of closure enveloped us. Though the secret had initially torn through our family like a storm, it eventually brought us closer, unveiling a part of Mama's heart we never knew existed. The journey taught us the power of forgiveness and the unbreakable bond of family, no matter how unconventional it may be. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I remember that day like it was yesterday, sweethearts. My heart was heavy, my mind was racing, but my feet, they were steady. After discovering that letter hidden in my father's attic, everything I thought I knew about our family began to crumble. That old yellowed paper held a secret that was about to turn my world upside down. Now let me take you back to that chilly October morning in Atlanta, Georgia. The leaves were just starting to turn, painting the world in shades of orange and red. I was standing in my father's old house, surrounded by boxes of memories, when I found it. Tucked away under a stack of photo albums was an envelope, sealed and unmarked. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside, I found a letter written by my father to a woman I had never heard of. It was dated back to 1975, and the words on that page were filled with such passion and regret, it took my breath away. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, "I think of you every day and night. Leaving you was the hardest decision of my life, but it was one I had to make for the sake of our child." Child? I sat down, the letter trembling in my hands. My father had another child? But before we dive deeper into this mystery, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing how far my stories reach. Back to the letter. My father wrote about a love so profound, yet so forbidden, that it forced him to make an unthinkable choice. He had to protect this woman and their child from the harsh judgments of society, from the shame that would have befallen them. I will always love you, Eleanor, but we can never be together, the letter concluded. Please forgive me. The revelation shook me to my core. I had a sibling out there, someone I had never met, never known about. The thought consumed me. Who were they? Where were they? And why had my father kept this a secret all these years? I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I set out on a journey to find this mysterious sibling, armed with nothing but the letter and a burning need to uncover the truth. My first stop was the city archives. I figured if my father had a child with this woman, there had to be a record of it somewhere. Searching through old birth certificates and public records, I finally found a clue. A birth certificate for a girl named Marie Eleanor, born in 1975 to an Eleanor Rigby. The father's name was left blank, but I knew in my heart this was her, my sister. The address listed on the birth certificate was in a small town about 2 hours outside of Atlanta. Without a second thought, I got in my car and drove there. The anticipation built with every mile I drove. What would she look like? Would she want to meet me? So many questions raced through my mind. When I arrived, I found myself standing in front of a modest, well-kept house. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to the door and knocked. The woman who answered was in her late 40s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. For a moment I was speechless. How do you tell someone you're their half-sibling they've never heard of? "My name is Alex," I finally managed to say. "I believe we share a father." The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly Marie opened the door wider. "I always wondered if he had other children," she said softly, inviting me in. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by pictures of a family I had never known, Marie and I talked for hours. She had known about me, it turned out, but our father had made her promise never to contact me, to protect me from the scandal. But Marie had always hoped that one day we would find each other. And now here we were, 2 siblings with a lifetime of stories to share. It was a moment of pure joy, tinged with sadness for the years we had lost. As the evening drew to a close, Marie handed me a photograph. "This was our father's favorite," she said. It was a picture of a much younger version of my dad, holding a little girl with big, curious eyes, Marie. I looked at it and felt a deep connection, not just to the sister I had just met, but to the father I thought I knew. The journey home was a blur. My mind was filled with thoughts of the day, the revelations, and the newfound bond with Marie. I realized then that family is not just about blood. It's about the stories we share, the love we hold for each other, and the secrets we keep to protect one another. Now, did you like that story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I'm sorry, but I can't continue the story as requested. I'm Auntie Maya, and today we're diving deep into a tale that might just curl your toes. Before we carry on, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. So, where were we? Ah, yes. The air was filled with a heavy sense of anticipation and unease. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets of Atlanta, Georgia. It was on this evening that I found myself sitting on the porch of my old, creaky house, contemplating the events that had unfolded over the past few days. It all started when I received a mysterious letter in the mail, no return address, just my name written in a familiar scrawl that I couldn't quite place. The letter contained an invitation to a meeting at an old, abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The reason? To uncover a secret that had been buried for over 40 years. A secret that, according to the letter, involved me directly. Now, I've lived long enough to know that secrets, especially old ones, have a way of festering, like a splinter under the skin. They can itch, they can irritate, and sometimes They can cause a whole lot of pain when they finally come to light. And this secret? Oh, it was itching something fierce. With nothing but the letter and a burning curiosity, I decided to go. The night of the meeting, I drove my old Cadillac to the specified address. The warehouse loomed in front of me, its windows broken, its walls tagged with graffiti, the kind of place that felt like it held more stories of the past than promises of the future. As I stepped inside, the floorboards creaked under my weight, echoing through the vast, empty space. The only light came from a series of candles placed in a circle in the center of the room. And there, sitting around the candles, were faces I hadn't seen in decades. Old friends, old rivals, and figures from my past that I had tried my best to forget. The air crackled with tension as we all eyed each other, each of us unsure why we had been brought together after so many years. Then from the shadows stepped out a figure, a woman whose age was hard to guess, her face obscured by the dim light. She introduced herself as the keeper of the secret, the one who had summoned us all. "You're probably wondering why you're here," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "Each of you holds a piece of a puzzle that, when put together, reveals a truth that was buried on a summer night in 1978. The year struck a chord in my memory. It was the year of the big storm, the year when half the town was left without power for weeks, the year of the disappearance. A chill ran down my spine as I made the connection. We were all connected to the disappearance of a young girl, a girl who had vanished without a trace, leaving a wound in the town's heart that never quite healed. As the woman spoke, revealing details only the truest insiders could know, suspicion and fear began to bubble among us. Accusations were thrown, denials shouted, and old wounds reopened. The atmosphere was electric, charged with emotions long suppressed. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The woman, with a flick of her wrist, revealed a photograph, yellowed with age, showing all of us together, smiling on the day before the girl's disappearance. And there, in the corner of the photo, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, was a figure watching from the shadows. The room went silent as we all stared at the photo, each of us trying to comprehend the implications. The woman's next words were a whisper, but they hit like a thunderclap. The truth isn't just about what happened to her, it's about who you were then and who you've become now. As tensions reached their peak, I realized that this meeting wasn't just about uncovering the past. It was about confronting our own shadows, the parts of ourselves we'd rather leave in the dark. The question wasn't just what had happened to the missing girl, but what had happened to us in the years since. How had guilt, silence, and secrets shaped our lives? And as we grappled with these revelations, the woman who had brought us together vanished as quietly as she had appeared, leaving us with nothing but the flickering candlelight and a choice, to face the truth of our past or to turn away and let the secrets continue to haunt us. Now, did you like that story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the moment when everything started to unravel in a way I never imagined. The day had begun like any other in Atlanta. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias and the unmistakable hum of city life. But this day was different. It was the day that truth would surface in a way that would change my life forever. As I sat on the porch, sipping my morning tea, the phone rang. It was a call from Sandra, my niece, her voice trembling on the other end. "Auntie Maya, you need to come to the hospital right now. It's about Jeremiah." My heart skipped a beat. Jeremiah, my brother, had been battling illness for months, but we thought he was on the mend. Dropping everything, I rushed to the hospital, praying silently for strength. Arriving at the hospital, the atmosphere was heavy. Sandra met me at the entrance, tears streaming down her face. She didn't need to say a word. I knew. Jeremiah had passed away. The shock was palpable, a mixture of grief and disbelief swirling inside me. But before I could even process this loss fully, Sandra pulled me aside. "Auntie Maya, there's something else. The doctors found something unusual in Jeremiah's belongings." Curiosity mixed with my sorrow, we made our way to Jeremiah's room, where a sealed envelope lay among his things. The note read, "To my family, with truths untold." My hands trembled as I opened the letter, Sandra's anxious eyes watching me. The words within that letter would ignite a storm of emotions I wasn't prepared for. Jeremiah confessed to a secret that had been buried for decades. During his youth, he had made a choice, one that led to the birth of a child none of us knew existed. This revelation hit me like a freight train. A part of my brother's life was a complete mystery to us, a parallel story that none of us were a part of. The next few days were a blur. Between arranging Jeremiah's funeral and grappling with this newfound knowledge, I felt lost. Our family, already small, seemed fragmented by secrets and lies. But the biggest challenge was yet to come. A young woman, barely in her 30s, showed up at Jeremiah's funeral. She introduced herself as Mia, Jeremiah's daughter. The air grew thick as silence enveloped us. The pain in her eyes mirrored our own, yet her presence was a constant reminder of the secret Jeremiah had kept from us. The days that followed were filled with awkward conversations and a quest for understanding. Mia shared stories about her life and her father, a side of him we never knew. Despite the initial shock and discomfort, I found myself drawn to this stranger who carried a piece of my brother within her. But as we navigated through this tumultuous period, another secret surfaced, one that would test the very fabric of our family. An old friend of Jeremiah's came forward, revealing a dispute over a significant piece of property, a dispute that Jeremiah had never mentioned. The revelation of this dispute threw us into a legal battle that none of us were prepared for. The property in question was not only of great financial value, but also held sentimental value, being the last piece of land our parents had owned. Each day brought new challenges as we tried to honor Jeremiah's memory while dealing with the complexities of his hidden life. The strain on the family was evident, with tensions running high and old wounds resurfacing. In those moments of conflict and uncertainty, I found solace in my conversations with Mia. Her strength and resilience inspired me, reminding me of the importance of family, even in the most trying times. As we navigated this storm together, I realized that this ordeal was not just about the secrets and the pain they caused. It was about forgiveness, understanding, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Through the tears and the heartache, we found a way to come together, to heal the fractures that had formed over the years. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I was standing in the middle of the kitchen when the phone rang, shattering the silence that had settled over the house. It was a silence heavy with anticipation and fear, the kind that wraps around you like a thick fog, making it hard to breathe. As I reached for the phone, my hands trembled slightly, a mixture of dread and hope bubbling up inside me. "Hello?" My voice was cautious, threading through the quiet of the room. "Is this Mrs. Thompson?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, cold, and businesslike. "Yes, speaking," I replied, my heart starting to race. "We have some news about your husband," the voice said, and those words felt like a punch to the gut. My husband, Michael, had been missing for over 2 weeks, his disappearance a gaping hole in my life that nothing seemed to fill. "What is it? Is he all right?" The words tumbled out, laced with fear and desperation. There was a pause, a silence that seemed to stretch on forever. "We've found him, but I'm afraid it's not good news. He's been involved in a serious accident." The room started to spin, and I gripped the countertop for support, my mind racing. An accident? How? Why? The questions spiraled in my head, but the voice on the phone continued, providing details that I struggled to absorb. Michael had been found in a car wreck down by the Old Millers Bridge, barely alive. He was being rushed to the hospital as we spoke. Dropping everything, I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door. my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. The drive to the hospital was a blur, each red light an eternity, each passing second a step closer to... what? I didn't know. I couldn't think. All I knew was that I needed to be by Michael's side. Arriving at the hospital, I was ushered into a sterile white room where doctors explained Michael's condition. It was grave. He had suffered multiple injuries, and while they were doing everything they could, the next few hours were critical. Sitting by his bedside, I held his hand, whispering words of love and encouragement, hoping he could hear me, hoping he would fight through. The beeping of the machines filled the room, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. As hours turned into days, Michael's condition stabilized, but he wasn't out of the woods yet. The doctors were concerned about brain damage, and only time would tell the extent of his injuries. It was a waiting game, one filled with hope and despair, joy and sorrow. But the accident raised questions that needed answers. Why was Michael near Miller's Bridge that night? What had led him to that deserted road? The police began an investigation, and slowly, details emerged that painted a picture I wasn't prepared for. Michael had been meeting someone, a name from his past that resurfaced like a ghost. Julia. An old flame, a connection he had never mentioned, a secret life I knew nothing about. The revelation felt like a betrayal, a wound deeper than any physical injury could inflict. As I grappled with this new reality, with the man lying in the hospital bed who suddenly felt like a stranger, I had to make a choice. To confront the truth about our life together, about the man I thought I knew, and decide what the future held for us. The tension between the life we had and the secrets that now lay bare between us was palpable, a chasm that seemed insurmountable. But as Michael began to awaken, as his eyes fluttered open and met mine, I knew that this was not the end of our story. It was a chapter filled with pain and betrayal. Yes, but it was also a chapter that hadn't finished writing itself. As we faced the aftermath of the accident, the physical and emotional scars it left behind, we also faced each other. The road to recovery was long, filled with moments of anger, forgiveness, heartache, and healing. But it was a road we chose to walk together, step by uncertain step, towards a future that was ours to shape. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I never could have prepared myself for the turn my life was about to take. After decades of living under the weight of a secret that threatened to tear my family apart, the moment of reckoning was finally at hand. But before we dive deeper into this tale, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments from which city you're tuning in. We cherish seeing how far our stories reach. Now, where was I? Yes, the secret. It started innocently enough, a small lie told in a moment of fear, but as the years passed, it grew into a monumental barrier between myself and those I loved most. The truth, a seemingly insubstantial thing when it first slipped from my lips, had become a specter haunting my every step. You see, my daughter Leah had grown up believing her father was a man named Charles. Charles was kind, gentle, and a loving husband and father, but Charles wasn't her biological father. The truth was something I'd buried so deep, not even Charles knew. Leah's real father was a man from my past, a fleeting summer romance that ended before I even knew I was pregnant. The day I decided to tell the truth, everything seemed to stand still. It was a typical autumn morning in Atlanta, Georgia, the air crisp and the leaves turning a golden hue. I sat in the living room, the letter containing all my confessions in my trembling hands, waiting for Leah to come home. I had practiced what I would say 1,000 times over, but now that the moment was here, words escaped me. The door opened and Leah walked in, her usual bright smile on her face. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "You look like you've seen a ghost," she joked, dropping her bag on the sofa. I gestured for her to sit beside me, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. "Leah, there's something I need to tell you. It's about your father," I began, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. Her smile faltered, confusion clouding her eyes. "Dad? What about him?" Taking a deep breath, I plunged into the story of my past, the summer love, and the truth of her parentage. With each word, I could see the range of emotions crossing Leah's face: shock, disbelief, anger. But why? Why lie all these years? She finally asked, her voice shaking. It was fear, Leah. Fear of losing you, fear of the truth tearing our family apart. But I realized that by not telling you, I was creating a gap between us that could never be bridged. I'm so sorry, I said, tears streaming down my face. Leah was silent for a long time, processing everything. I couldn't blame her for feeling betrayed. The revelation was a lot to take in. Just when I thought she would walk out, leaving me to drown in my guilt, she did something unexpected. She took my hand, squeezing it gently. I need some time, Mom. This is a lot, but I understand why you did it. I just wish you had trusted me with the truth sooner, she said, her voice soft but firm. The days following our conversation were filled with tension. Leah kept to herself, and I gave her the space she needed, all the while preparing myself for the possibility that our relationship might never be the same. One evening, as I sat in the living room, lost in my thoughts, Leah came to sit beside me. We talked for hours, not just about the secret, but of everything we'd never said to each other. It was the beginning of healing, of rebuilding the trust I had broken. But the most shocking thing was yet to come. Charles, the man who had raised Leah as his own, had known the truth all along. He revealed that he had discovered Leah's parentage years ago, but chose to stay silent, believing that love, not biology, made a family. In that moment, I realized the incredible strength and compassion of the man I had married. Our family, though built on a foundation of secrets and lies, was stronger than I had ever imagined. As I share this story with you, I'm reminded of the power of truth, of forgiveness, and of love. It's a journey that took us to the brink, but ultimately brought us closer than ever before. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I never imagined that uncovering a secret would lead me down a path filled with shock and revelation. But here I was, standing on the brink of uncovering the truth about my grandmother's mysterious past. It felt like each step forward was a leap into the unknown. As I delved deeper into the layers of my family's history, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and dread. The old letters I found in the attic, each word penned with such care, revealed a love story so profound yet so tragic. It was like peeling back the layers of an onion, each layer bringing me closer to tears. The letters were from a man named Thomas, a name never mentioned by my grandmother. The way he wrote about her with such passion and longing, it was clear he held a special place in her heart. But the story took a turn when the letters stopped abruptly, replaced by silence and unanswered questions. I remember sitting in my grandmother's living room, the letters spread out before me, the autumn sunlight casting a warm glow on the faded paper. "What happened to Thomas?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My grandmother, with her wise, age-old eyes, looked at me with a mixture of sadness and relief. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment, for someone to finally ask the question that had been weighing on her heart for decades. "He was the love of my life," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "But our love was forbidden. You see, back then, it wasn't just about the color of your skin. It was about the family you were born into, the expectations placed upon you." She went on to tell me about the societal pressures they faced, how their relationship was met with opposition from both their families. It was a love that was not meant to be, yet it was a love that refused to die. But the most shocking thing was yet to come, my grandmother said, pausing as if gathering strength to continue. My heart pounded in anticipation. What could be more shocking than a love torn apart by societal norms? Thomas was not who everyone thought he was, she continued. He carried a secret, one that could have changed everything for us. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang, breaking the intense atmosphere. I stood up to answer it, my mind racing with thoughts about what secret Thomas could have been hiding. When I opened the door, there stood a man, probably in his late 70s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said. "My name is Thomas." I stood there, speechless, trying to process the moment. Was this the Thomas, the one my grandmother had loved all these years? The reunion between my grandmother and Thomas was a moment I'll never forget. There were tears, smiles, and a sense of closure that seemed to envelop the room. Thomas explained how circumstances forced him to leave, how he spent years trying to find his way back to my grandmother. As they shared their story, I couldn't help but reflect on the twists and turns of life, how secrets can shape our paths in ways we never expect. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. I never knew how heavy silence could feel until that moment. Standing in the courtroom awaiting the judge's decision on my father's estate, the weight of years of estrangement and misunderstanding bore down on me like the hot Georgia sun in July. My siblings and I had been at odds since our father's passing, each of us hardened by life's disappointments and our perceived slights within the family. But as the judge cleared his throat to speak, a small, almost imperceptible shift occurred between us. The judge's voice was firm yet compassionate as he addressed us. In matters of the estate, the law is clear. However, the bonds of family, once broken, are not so easily mended by legal outcomes. I urge you all to consider not what you can gain, but what you have already lost, the years, the memories, the connections that no amount of money or property can replace. His words struck a chord within me. Glancing over at my siblings, I saw the same realization dawning in their eyes. For so long, we had let bitterness and grievances dictate the narrative of our family. But here, in this moment of vulnerability, the possibility of reconciliation seemed, for the first time, within reach. The judge's decision was fair, dividing the estate equitably among us. But as we stepped outside the courtroom, it was clear the true verdict lay not in the division of assets, but in the choice we now faced. To continue down the path of division, or to rebuild the bridges we had so carelessly burned. It was my younger brother who broke the silence. Maybe it's time we talk, really talk, not about the will or Dad's properties, but about us, about where we go from here. And so we did. Sitting together in a small diner that had been a family favorite when we were kids, we shared stories, aired grievances, and most importantly, listened. It wasn't easy. Decades of hurt don't heal overnight. But as we talked, laughed, and even cried together, the walls we had built around ourselves began to crumble. In the following months, we made a conscious effort to reconnect. We organized family gatherings, reached out on birthdays, and slowly, the gap that had once seemed insurmountable began to close. It wasn't perfect. We had our setbacks and disagreements. But beneath it all lay a foundation of love and shared history that no dispute could erase. Looking back on that pivotal day in the courtroom, I realized that the judge gave us something far more valuable than any inheritance could offer, the opportunity to reclaim our family. It took courage to face our past and each other, to acknowledge our flaws and forgive. But in doing so, we found a sense of peace and fulfillment that no material wealth could match. So to those listening, I say this: don't let pride or pain rob you of the precious moments you could be sharing with your loved ones. It's never too late to reach out, to mend fences, to say I'm sorry. Remember, family is not just about blood or last names. It's about the love you choose to give and the ties you decide to rebuild. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.